Hello, my name is Mark Newman, and I am the new Chief Advancement Officer here at Hampton University. Excited to be part of the Hampton family. I have been in and around philanthropy for literally my entire career, not just in the nonprofit sector in Chicago, but I have had the fortunate responsibility of being a vice president on now my fourth college campus. I am passionate about making sure that faculty, staff, institutions have the resources necessary to support our students.
Hi, my name is Monica Spruill. When I was at Hampton, I was Monica Lewis, class of '87 Essence. I am a proud member of the National Hampton Alumni Association Board. And for my day work, I am a managing director at the global consulting firm, Accenture.
Sure, I'm Calvin L. Butts Jr., a 2002 graduate of Hampton University, and I currently serve on the Board of Trustees since 2017.
My name is Lorraine Morris. I am the president of the Southern New Jersey Alumni Chapter of the National Hampton Alumni Association.
How y'all doing? My name is Chad Easterling. I am class of 2009 Ogre Phi Ogre. I am the co-founder and CEO of Obsidian Works, which is a marketing and advertising agency talking to diverse audiences in diverse communities. And during my time at Hampton, I also played on the basketball team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyel Hayes, class of 1998, and I am your NHAA Association Alumni Giving Co-Chair.
But yeah, I had a great time at Hampton. You know, I just felt like it being called, you know, your home away from home is exactly what Hampton was for me. It really was my home and is my home away from home.
My name is Jennifer Lynn Williams, and I serve as the Chief Development Officer of the USA Basketball Foundation.
My experience with Hampton is one that when I'm asked, would I choose Hampton again? I always say I would choose it 100 times over. My experience was one that was rich, fulfilling. It built me up as an individual and poured into me a type of pride that you can only get from attending an HBCU and attending the best HBCU there is. So Hampton, my home by the sea, really shaped me for the things that I was able to accomplish in my career so far and what I expect to accomplish as I go forward.
My experience in philanthropy largely started with Hampton. I started off as my class leader for our 5-year reunion, where we had a goal to raise $5,000, and found my love for asking people for money for great causes there. And since then, that has blossomed to us now having 5 reunions, and us as a class raising hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've given back to Hampton. And I've expanded that to now join a couple boards. I previously was on the board of a nonprofit called Live Out Loud, where we raise money to provide services for LGBTQ youth in the New York City area. And in my day job, I lead research and insights at BET. I also co-lead our social impact group. And a big part of social impact work is asking foundations and partners to help you achieve your goals in society. So across every vector of my life, my personal life, my professional life, and my nonprofit work, it all centers around raising funds to drive impact for our communities.
So I attended the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and I was a basketball student athlete. I was a captain for my last 2 years on the team. And I always wanted to work in sport, but didn't really know the avenue of how I was going to impact the sports landscape. I knew I did not want to coach. Nothing against my coaching folks out there, but it just wasn't for me. So I had to really figure out how I wanted to impact sports. And so I was a journalism major at Carolina and an African American history major. And once I graduated, I ended up working at Fox Sports in Atlanta, where I worked as a production assistant. And I also did some freelance work as a color analyst for various entities. And so television was great. I loved being able to tell the narrative, which has really helped me as a development officer, but it just wasn't my calling. And so through my basketball playing days, I had a postgraduate scholarship, the Robin Roberts Sports Communication Award through the WBCA, and that allowed for me to go and pursue graduate school. And I knew I always wanted to attend an HBCU, but because I was a top 25 recruit coming out of high school in basketball in the country, no HBCUs recruited me. And so I knew for grad school that I was going to attend an HBCU, and I decided to go to North Carolina Central University, where I received my master's in athletic administration. And that was probably one of the best decisions of my life, because not only did I meet my husband, I was able to get some really great hands-on experience and working in an athletic department. And I was in meetings that I probably shouldn't have been in at such a young age, but I really had the opportunity to learn a lot and to be involved in a lot of different areas of sport, which helped me to determine my love for development, working in corporate sales, marketing, everything external, alumni, relations, engagement. And so that fueled me on my path to be an athletic director. And so I have always been external. When you look at the college athletics landscape, working on the external side. And so from graduating from North Carolina Central, I went on to work at Women Leaders in Sport. And it was in Wilmington, North Carolina at the time. It's now in Kansas City. But from Wilmington, North Carolina, I went to Chicago, where I was the assistant director of development at DePaul University. And then from there, I accepted the role as associate athletic director, executive director at North Carolina A&T over the Aggie Athletic Foundation. And working at North Carolina A&T pretty much solidified me as one of the top fundraisers in the country. And we had some really great success there, was able to raise 7 figures annually through our football season tickets sales, as well as priority purchasing, as well as just philanthropic donations. And was recruited away from A&T to Alabama State University as the deputy athletic director. And then there I assumed and ascended to being the director of athletics at Alabama State. And that's kind of my career has taken me through, just fundraising and being intentional about the external side. It allowed for me to lead an athletic department at a really early age. My goal was always to be an AD before 40, and I achieved that with ease. And I attribute a lot to being a fundraiser and knowing how to connect with people and build meaningful relationships.
Philanthropy, in my opinion, has been the backbone of how we, as African Americans, have been able to pursue education. We all have different routes to college and to higher education. Some had the opportunity to be fully funded or supported. Others had to search for how they would be able to pay for their education. No matter what, philanthropy makes up what I consider to be the fabric of a matriculating class, the fabric of an HBCU, a higher education institution, because we need people who come from all parts of the country and the world to challenge us in school, to build a broader set of thinking and aspirations and challenge each other. It is through philanthropy that we are able to help students who need help, and we're able to contribute to the building of the institution, to go beyond the scope of the buildings, the infrastructure that currently exists, and to plan for the future. In the work that I do professionally, we help organizations think about what their future is going to be and plan for that future. Philanthropy is the way in which we accomplish it.
Philanthropy has impacted Black students and institutions really from a standpoint of being able to provide not only those students, but those institutions with opportunities to better position those students to get to where they want to go, right? So in my mind, philanthropy plays a role in getting those students and giving them the opportunity to get into these institutions and to stay in these institutions and to continue to, not only be there, but to thrive. And then from an institution standpoint, what I have seen in my experience is that, philanthropy provides these institutions with the opportunity and the ability to provide the necessary tools, resources, facilities that a lot of the other institutions that are not HBCUs look like, so that we can still operate at that same level as them.
The biggest impact of philanthropy on Black students, I would argue, is the HBCU system itself. That there were a number of courageous men and women who in the 1800s took a big chance and said, we are going to educate and impact the lives of former slaves at a time when we were recently not even seen as fully human. So imagine the leap in vision, the leap in identity that it took to see someone holy that society didn't think was a full person. So I think the philanthropy for Black people started there, and it expanded itself now into areas where we have believed that education is the unlock, or one of the unlocks for success. And some would argue that the Black middle class has been founded mainly on educational advancement. So the idea that philanthropy has far-reaching impacts beyond just a book scholarship here and there or a tuition payment, it can actually change lives. It can it creates mobility opportunities for families and allows people to really see themselves fundamentally differently than they were seeing previously.
Philanthropy has played a critical role in shaping the landscape of higher education, particularly here in the HBCU world. Early institutional support, kind of post-Civil War or the Reconstruction era. You think about all the philanthropists and the religious organizations. I think it was even the Freedmen's Bureau. They helped establish HBCUs. They were a big part of our history and our founding. And I think the role of those philanthropists in the early 1900s and the early 20th century, folks like John Rockefeller and others who helped establish institutions and funds that helped launch HBCUs and help us kind of jumpstart our own education journey here in the United States.
Interestingly enough, I started my career with the United Negro College Fund, and if you look at the history of the College Fund, 1944, you had Dr. Frederick Patterson bring together a consortium of institutions who, the academic acumen was there, the academic rigor was there, but the main issue was having the resources necessary to make these institutions thrive. That hasn't changed. And, it's important that we, continue to advocate, continue to work to make sure our institutions are are resourced to a point where they can continue to prepare our students to be the leaders that they will become, the leaders they have become through not just matriculating at Hampton University, but matriculating at HBCUs across the country.
I mean, when you look at a lot of our HBCUs, we're limited resourced, and not just in athletics, the space that I'm most familiar with, but across the board compared to some of our counterparts, which are deemed your PWIs. And when you look at the idea of philanthropy and fundraising, we're behind at HBCUs. A lot of PWIs have been fundraising since early in like the 1900s. Like they've had some form of ways to give back, and we've really kind of gotten into it in like the 70s. And so I think that we are now, with the spotlight being shone on HBCUs as a place to go, as a safe haven for our students, which a lot of us already knew that, but I think after George Floyd, it put a spotlight on a lot of brown and Black students wanting to be around people that look like them. And so it's forced our external units at institutions to be more organized and intentional about how they're hiring and staffing and development units, institutional advancement, beefing up there, because you need resources to operate. The biggest difference I saw between being at my PWI as an undergrad and then when I went over to North Carolina Central with my husband, he was a student athlete there, was the lack of resources and access and opportunity. Resources allows for you to have access and opportunity. And because we had a good amount of resources at UNC, we had access to a lot of more opportunities than my husband and his teammates at North Carolina Central. And so that really became a focus for me as to why the majority of my career was spent at HBCUs, because I wanted to be able to provide students that look like me with the opportunities that I had as at a high level Division I institution. And that had to do with being able to generate revenue. We have wealth in the Black community. I don't want people to ever tell us that we don't, but it's about making the ask and then creating a process and a structure for people to be able to safely give their monies. What I saw also working at HBCUs is the lack of trust in where is my money going when I give it, because people weren't transparent. And that was something I was very big on when I came to A&T, was to be transparent about where your monies are going, because I just noticed there was a lot of like distrust in the process or sometimes in the people. And so I held town hall meetings. I made sure I was meeting with our alumni chapters and different groups, key stakeholders, so that they knew they had access to me and they knew that I was going to show them exactly where their monies was going and how it was making a difference.
We know that historically Black institutions have not had the same opportunities that predominantly white institutions have had throughout the history of this country. And so philanthropy helps to even the playing field, so to say, to allow those students who may not have the community access or community support or even the expectation to seek out opportunities of higher education. Philanthropy allows them to do those things that they see their white counterparts doing and be able to participate in a world that is generally designed for them not to succeed in.
One of the main key barriers or challenges that I would say Black students face in completing higher education, is being able to finish paying, the remainder of their tuition or whatever is needed to pay to receive their degree or diploma. And I think, from a access perspective when it comes to education, what I think about is the ability to attend certain conferences or attend certain events, even being able to attend certain internships and programs that, in some environments, like that can be what an institution can help you and provide you with. And I think that is something that philanthropy can address, from a barriers perspective and breaking through.
Some of the biggest challenges faced by Black learners right now are centered around two fronts. One, the K through 12 education system in most public schools are not designed to allow Black students to master at their craft. They're designed to help students pass state tests to get a diploma. That is very different than mastering the educational opportunities that are put in front of them. And that's not what the K through 12 public systems are built for. So I think a lot of challenges that kids face coming into college are centered around a lack of preparedness due to systemic challenges that they face in the K through 12 system. Additionally, you compound that first fact with the fact that many students are still, even in Black families now, many students are still the first one in their family to graduate, or will be the first one to graduate. So you don't often have a system or a wealth of people who've done it, who've been through it. So in many ways, you and your family are navigating these challenges on your own for the first time, right? It's like going on an expedition for the first time by yourself. And so there are a lot of challenges that are inherent versus coming from a family with a wealth of people who have completed multiple degrees. And it provides a different level of perspective. And third, we know that the average income for the Black family hovers around $50,000 a year in America. And that alone means that the vast majority of Black children, Black learners, do not have the financial resources to weather unexpected storms that come up. And so we are really thoughtful as an alumni association, how can we create solutions that can help close that gap? So when you think about those three pieces, I'll summarize those three pieces. One, there's a lack of preparedness given some of the systemic challenges in the public K through 8 system. Two, you have students who are still navigating the college environment, oftentimes as a first. And then three, you have the family, the lack of wealth that exists in today's modern Black family doesn't always allow students to weather unexpected financial crises that come up. So those three things come together are some of the biggest challenges that we're facing to help students come in and leave school in a successful manner, in a timely manner.
I think that we just need to be honest and recognize that higher education is a huge expense. And for a lot of the students that we interact with, we know that they are not necessarily coming from communities that are encouraging or even understanding of the cost that is required to attend an institution like Hampton University. It's not just tuition, it's not just books, it's not even just room and board. It's the day-to-day living, the things that you don't necessarily account for. And so philanthropy allows these students to focus on the thing that they came to Hampton to do, which is to study and excel. Without having to focus and stress about money, we know that our students are going to be able to do those great things that they came to Hampton to learn how to do.
Again, the biggest barrier for student success is financial resources. Financial aid only goes so far, and a lot of our students, first generation, this is their first opportunity, and there is a wealth gap in America. From its founding, there isn't an equal playing field that we play on, and so when our students are looking to build opportunities for generational wealth or to support sustained communities, it takes an investment. And I think in life we're taught to invest in things that are important to us, whether it be stocks and bonds or mutual funds. I think an investment in students is that same caliber. It is investing in the future. It is investing, not just in the future of that student, but the generational impact that education has on families, that it has on communities. If we want to continue to see change, especially in these times where those federal resources are not as confirmed as they were before, there is a critical urgency of now to make sure that we are investing back into our students.
When it comes to the financial burden that goes on Black students, I don't just see this as, what I would call the standard of like loans, tuitions, and then those fees associated for those students to excel from a higher education standpoint. I also see, philanthropy playing a role as it pertains to helping some of these institutions in expanding their curriculum, right? Bringing in adjunct professors or guest lecturers, bringing in unique programs that, not just helps these students to stay in school and to meet that first step of being at the university, but that next step of like, how are you maximizing your time while you're there?
Well, philanthropy in general supports many great causes, but its focus on Black students who are currently enrolled or are planning to attend HBCUs, it can be a major burden lift off of the entire process, from helping the parents financially afford the education, reducing the amount of student debt that the individual has once they graduate. We've seen examples like what Robert Smith did at Morehouse, where those kids likely today are just in a better position financially because they didn't have the burden of debt from their tuition expenses. So opportunities like that will provide just a significant jump start in the wealth journey for individuals as they graduate college and they look to become professionals and start families. Anytime you can reduce debt and increase one's income streams and opportunities, it plays significant impact on their lifestyle and their ability to save and invest, which are also key components to us building and maintaining wealth.
I think that one of the things that a lot of us who have graduated from Hampton and who have gone on to be successful forget is that every person who graduates from Hampton doesn't have the same origin story. So for me, when I was going to Hampton, I knew that I was going to Hampton because my father went to Hampton. Hampton was the only college I applied to. Not only did my father go, my godfather went. My godsister was currently a student when I was a student. And my community, my family, everyone knew that I was going to Hampton. And so everyone was prepared for every step of my Hampton journey. But now I recognize, and especially having worked with young people who don't come from that same type of background, everybody doesn't have that same type of preparation. And so a lot of students, more than we probably realize, come to Hampton University with just hope. And hope is amazing, but it does not pay tuition. Hope does not allow these students to be able to live at their maximum potential while they are here on this campus. And so philanthropy helps these students to, again, not be stressed out about money, because regardless of what you're doing, regardless of what your ambitions are, very few people do not have to worry about money at all. And for those of us who have been able to come through Hampton University and be successful in our various careers, we owe it to those students to help them be like us, to help them be able to just focus on the fun things. Very rarely do you want to look back at your college experience and think about how stressed you were about money. Because if you are stressed about money, specifically at a private institution, the chances are you're going to leave. Now, hopefully you continue somewhere else, but the likelihood of that student being able to recover from the money that was already spent and not getting that degree, those chances are lower for our students. Those outcomes are lower for our students. And so philanthropy helps to again, just level the playing field to allow them to be able to focus on the things that are the most important things while they're at Hampton.
Philanthropy can play a major role in helping to address mental health disparities that exist right now in the community. Mental health often is seen as a luxury. It's something that you get to do if you have the resources, versus realizing that mental health, given the stresses that we have in American society, is something that everyone needs. And so philanthropy can actually be seen as an unlock. Once you cover your base needs, and I'll go back to Maslow's hierarchy. All of you out there from Hampton remember Maslow's hierarchy. The idea at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy is your food, your shelter, your base needs. But then once you move up Maslow's hierarchy, those higher order needs around community, identity, self-fulfillment play in. Mental health is key to actually helping you see yourself as a whole person. And philanthropy can help you actually make sure that those bottom needs are met, right? It's hard for me to have a conversation about mental health when you're starving, right? It's hard for me to have a conversation about seeing yourself as the doctor you want to be when right now your parent is going through a medical crisis and you may have to leave school. We have to philanthropy can actually help solve for some of those basic needs, which will allow that person to then go on the journey of healing through mental health.
I think HBCUs, like any institutions, they're about opportunity, and that comes with resources. So, I think our instructors, our faculty and staff are world class, but for them to be able to prepare our students, there's only so much that a budget can handle, because there are requirements there. We have to keep the lights on first and foremost. We have to pay our bills. So in order for institutions to thrive, it is that support that goes above and beyond, that allows our faculty and staff, our instructors to be innovative, to create these opportunities, to create leaders. And philanthropic investment makes that possible.
No matter the institution, there's always going to be a competition for who's the best, who is at the cutting edge, what institution is being a trailblazer. You don't get to be at the cutting edge or take the trailblazer spot without support. There's only so much support that comes through the tuition that is paid by students who are attending an HBCU. The rest needs to come from former students who have progressed in their career, who have begun to save money for their future, and who have something to give back to the institution that helped create the path that they are on. Being a trailblazer as an HBCU, it's already a tough road, but doing so is important.
Philanthropy allows us to directly connect with the current students at Hampton University. In giving our money, we naturally as a people want to know to whom it's being given. And when we are in that position, that is the first step in building those relationships. So first you give your money, and then you give your time and your talent.
Philanthropic giving can help maintain and strengthen HBCUs by setting them up for long-term success in the future. As a part of my role at BET, we created a program called HBCU. And as we were building that program, which was designed to help shine a spotlight on all 100 plus HBCUs out there, we learned an interesting fact. Not one single HBCU has $1 billion in their endowment right now. Not one. But yet there are schools that are less nationally recognized, don't have the same research credentials, don't graduate the same illustrious alum as our top HBCUs in the PWI world that have bigger endowments than our HBCUs. So a space where I think philanthropic giving can help is going beyond the basics in giving, and then really thinking about the institutions. How do we shore up capital campaigns? How do we think about long-term funding? Because again, that allows the university to then reinvest in things that are really important for the students. Again, taking care of those kind of basic needs and helping them to thrive in the future. So my wish is that we can think about philanthropy in a way that would challenge us to try to get a number of Black colleges over the $1 billion threshold in their endowment.
When you give to a specific program or a specific school at Hampton University, you're creating a bridge between what you were at Hampton and what those students are going to be. You're going to be naturally curious about those students, and you're going to want to reach out and create and connect that pipeline. So philanthropy allows us not only to use our money, which is a very important tool, but also to use our time and our talent to give back to those students. Once we are connected to them financially, we're going to be connected to them emotionally. That is just who we are as a culture. We are connected to the things that we pour into.
Well, I mean, these HBCUs are not just schools. I mean, they're actual landmarks. I mean, they're really a part of our history. So I think philanthropy can look at it multiple ways. They can look at the opportunity to providing financial support for students who are on campus, but also the future of being able to have our culture and our history told and shared on very sacred grounds where many of our leaders from our past, our present and future have attended, taught, and have made significant impact in these areas and towns. So when you look at opportunities for philanthropy on these campuses, it's almost like donating to a museum or donating to a particular art collection. It's a collection of our stories, a collection of our history, a collection of our past. And to have these establishments continue to thrive and be beacons and icons in the community, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so I think, to me and for me, I always think about HBCUs and the role that philanthropy plays in it through this lens of self-sufficiency. And I think, that to me is what supporting HBCUs through philanthropy, while also allowing them to keep that cultural and educational identity really is. It's allowing them to continue to be self-sufficient so they can continue to carve their own path, continue to take innovative steps in taking on different approaches, and not feel like they have to, or we have to be dependent on, additional factors to help us get to where we want to go.
When you give, you have a more vested interest in who you're giving to. And by doing that, you are going to be naturally curious and be naturally motivated to give more, and not just giving of your finances, but giving of your talent. When you gave your money to these students for them to graduate, you're going to want to ensure that they also are employed and employable. And so it's not just if you can be a direct mentor to them, you're going to want to serve as a connector to all of your Hampton peers who are in the different fields that might also represent the students that you gave that money to.
I think we have to be open, and I say we HBCUs, is stepping outside our silo. I think collaboration, I always believe there's strength in numbers. And I keep referencing, North Carolina A&T because Chancellor Martin, who was the chancellor when I was there, he was intentional about the relationships he built in Greensboro and abroad. He was intentional about recruiting not just brown and black students, but any student who may wanted the HBCU experience. And he expanded and collaborated with UNC Greensboro, which was literally right there, you know? And so I think we can still protect our culture and collaborate with other universities and organizations that may not look like us. And so I think once we get out of that mindset, it's going to open more doors, because people give to people. And if you don't establish the relationships, you're not going to get the dollars.
Well, I think, right now, we look at our partnerships with what we call large institutions or PWIs. We find ourselves really, striving to compete with them with their research, with their scope of curriculum. And I think if philanthropy were to support us in adding new curriculum, adding new research grant and opportunities, we could be a force in the things that are trying to be cured or trying to be invented when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to technology. If we can participate in that, given our unique perspective, given the locations and the demographic of our students and the cities and towns these schools are located in, there's a value add there if we can participate in those research opportunities, in those pilot programs. And so I would love to see more philanthropy support HBCUs as we look to thrive, to develop partnerships across the United States and globally.
And so I'm going to take large institutions and the corporate arena. Again, we have something special. Even in this time where people are DEI and woke, institutions like Hampton have talent. And corporations, foundations are looking for talent, and I think there is there's a partnership. So when I think about philanthropic support, I like to use the word invest, because that investment in Hampton, that investment in a Hampton student, is not just one-sided. You may be providing financial support, but that investment gets you your next chief operating officer. It gets you a workforce that is equal or better than anywhere else you're going to recruit. So, that philanthropic support is reciprocal. When you invest in a student, your community gets stronger. When you invest in a student, society as a whole gets more sustainable. We provide support for generational, not just wealth, not just the growth in wealth of families, but also just the norm.
I think creating shared value is the unlock for philanthropy from large organizations and foundations back to HBCUs. We have to remember that if you look at your multi-billion-dollar foundations, they are getting thousands of asks. And so we have to be really thoughtful of how does the ask of our beloved university and our needs align with their value statement. And oftentimes people think, well, you should give just because, right? And I would use the analogy of a church, because many of us are familiar with the giving model of most Black churches. You sit in church on Sunday and pastor says give, and you're giving because you believe in what's happening there. You believe that you have a responsibility to take care of that house, but you believe that you have a responsibility to care for the house that you worship in, right? It's not your neighbors down the street responsibility. It's not the corporation that you shop at's responsibility. You see it as your responsibility. We oftentimes transfer that same mental model over to foundations, and we think that, oh, well, since this foundation gave to one HBCU, they should give to us all. And we don't create a shared value model. So by creating a shared value model that we can look at between foundations and philanthropic giving from foundations and from the university, it can create an unlock that goes into long-term giving versus transactional one-time giving.
Many Hampton graduates have gone on into business and into other areas where they work for large firms. I myself am a managing director at Accenture. Accenture is the third largest company on the planet behind Walmart and Amazon. Companies like Accenture and companies like those that our fellow alumni work for have matching programs. They have corporate giving programs where we are able to put Hampton in as a source of those funds. And we should be doing that. We should be doing that because these companies have deep pockets and they're looking for where they can invest and invest with the type of return that is meaningful. Hampton has a return that is meaningful. And we should be looking for every opportunity to put Hampton at the top of those giving lists.
Well, it's time, talent, and treasure, right? So, I mean, one of the things I try to do is make sure that I'm bringing value. And I think when you look at the economy and the job market today, wherever I can plug an opportunity for a student to get placed or have an opportunity for interview or even an internship, is bringing value to the overall body and to our organization. Creating more successful Hampton students takes the value of my diploma and raises it like a stock. And so I want that stock value to be extremely high. So my time is certainly well spent as I look to connect the university deans to opportunities to connect with other thought leaders in their particular fields that may lead to job opportunities or at least exposure to ways to entry into different industries. And then from a treasure perspective, giving back opens up opportunity for scholarship so that folks can stay on campus, stay active in the Hampton Alumni Matrix, and hopefully graduate and become outstanding alums themselves.
Yeah, so I think really how philanthropy can support students to get into all these different career fields and the position that it puts them in, it really is giving them the opportunities to seize these moments, whether that be helping them from a training perspective, helping them from a standpoint of getting from point A to point B. Sometimes the difference between being able to keep an internship or being able to keep a job or opportunity, it really is a matter of just being able to get to that place on a consistent basis, And so I think, it's figuring out the additional areas and opportunities that, where students can be served. And that is the additional role that philanthropy can play in helping them get to where they want to be.
So I have the privilege of being a board member for the National Hampton Alumni Association, and it is a privilege. There are so many things that I see, including I get to interact with many of our students who are in their junior, senior years, who are looking for opportunities to be mentored, opportunities to do internships. What philanthropy does and how it can be a benefit is not all internships are paid. Not all companies who would love to have someone from Hampton come and be part of their company for the summer or in an externship have the ability, especially in this economy, to pay for our juniors and seniors to be part of their companies. But what philanthropy does is allows us to make decisions about how we might supplement the income for a junior or senior who would love to be in an internship where they're paid. But here we can help supplement that. There are so many ways that philanthropy contributes to the building of the experience and the broadening of what our graduates or soon-to-be graduates get exposed to. So your dollars matter. They matter in helping keep students in school who run into roadblocks. They matter in providing grants to students who need extra money in order to matriculate. They matter in terms of placing students in internships and externships and helping to supplement the pay that they would normally get at larger institutions. There are many ways that your philanthropy dollars matter. And I just really encourage everyone to give back to the school that helped shape you.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to resources. If you have the funding and you have people and corporations who want to give, it's going to be able to create opportunities. And so I think that you have to have programs, like clearly defined programs to help students, because you have to tell the story. You can't get people to back or to give you money if you don't have programming in place and you aren't able to properly articulate the narrative, the story. And you have to have meaningful dialogue. You have to, I'm really big on video and content to tell the story, because that pulls at the heartstrings of individual givers as well as corporate givers. And so having this content, having testimonials, and then having programming in place that helps students get into the workforce, help students become better leaders, that's going to entice someone to give. That's going to make people want to pour into your programming. I feel like it's hard to tell something that's student-centric or a program that's student-centric. I feel like it's hard to say no to that, because I'm big on paying it forward and helping young people be able to achieve greatness, or to be able to see something in them, like we see something in them, help bring that out of them, that gift. And so anytime you can create some programming and be able to articulate and tell the story of how that program is going to make an impact, you're going to get people behind you who want to support philanthropically. So I will say, anytime that you have resources, and it's going to give you more like opportunity. You'll have greater opportunity for success. And I'm not saying that it's all about money, but money helps move the needle, and it helps provide people with resources to achieve greatness. And so anytime we can put our students in a position to win, we want to do that as leaders, as administrators. And that is what money can do. That is what relationships and connections with the right people can do. So that right there will dismantle systemic racism by having the resources to give your students the opportunity. I created a program here at USA Basketball called our Torch Leadership and Sport program. And I haven't had any students from Hampton yet. I'm hoping we get some in the program, but it is a mentorship program that matches students at minority serving institutions with our executive team here. And you get a year of mentorship and opportunities for exposure to people in the industry to be able to build those relationships so that you can ascend into roles that you aspire to. A lot of these students come in and aspire to be athletic directors, general managers, presidents of teams, coaches. And we are intentional about matching them with a mentor so that they have that access and opportunity. And that goes back to resources and philanthropy. If you are genuinely committed to making to helping students get better or to own in on their craft, you have to be able to tell that story and have the programming in place so that people can give the funding to support. Because a closed mouth doesn't get fed. If people don't know, or if you don't ask, they're not just gonna just say, hey, take my money. You have to really be able to show a case study as to the why and the need and the importance of having the programming, of having the dollars. And I just think that it starts again with the programming. Anytime you can have access and opportunity, that's going to dismantle that systemic racism, so that we are able to elevate our students to that next level and get them in those seats where you may not have traditionally seen Black and brown people, so that they can pay it forward and pull the next one up.
One of the phrases that I love right now is, when we're recruiting students, is we're encouraging them to go to institutions where it's not where you are tolerated, but where you're celebrated. I think, being celebrated is, being at a place where your greatness is recognized. It doesn't get lost. You're not always fighting uphill to make sure that you are heard or seen. There are more opportunities to be heard or seen. You come to an institution like Hampton, and you are encouraged to get involved, whether it be through student government, through Panhellenic organizations, through athletics. You build relationships that last you for a lifetime. I think that type of culture, again, where you feel accepted, where your professors know who you are. I've been with the president, and we've gone in the cafeteria, and students, even though they revere the title, the position, they appreciate the ability to be able to have a conversation, to be heard and to be seen. That's what this type of education provides. It is a familial setting where your success it's celebrated. I think it's that simple. It is where it's expected. It's where you're coming in the door, and there's an expectation that as a Hamptonian, you see it through your interaction. As an undergraduate, you see it through the interaction with alums. That as a Hamptonian, there's an expectation that you're going to be great, that there's opportunities for you to be great. And going back to philanthropy, that's what that investment into education provides. So as a student gets here, and they're not worried about that tuition bill. They're not worried about how am I going to be able to eat in the cafeteria, or are my classes going to be held because mom and daddy may be a little late paying the bill. If those worries are taken away, that student is going to have more time to feel celebrated. And there's a reciprocal effect. That student then becomes an alum, and they're more likely to invest back in the next generation. And then we built that cycle. We built something special. Philanthropy is at the centerpiece of that. It's about creating those opportunities. I think for Hampton in particular, it's coming and seeing the product. It is coming to our campus and walking and watching our students interact with each other. As they are presenting, as they are moving about in their daily activities, there's something different. There is something special. Sitting down with our faculty, our staff, hearing their dreams, desires for how they want to present educational opportunities. It is talking to those partners who we already have and realizing the impact that Hampton students have had on their organizations. I think it is our alumni base, who are probably one of the most powerful alumni bases I've ever been around, and where they are in society, where they are, from CEOs of Fortune 500 companies to film producers. In every sector, there are Hamptonians who have succeeded, and their Hampton education has played a significant role in that success. So there is, there's evidence. There is, There's something that you can judge it by. It's not like, I'm talking hypothetically. It's reality. The reality says that you come here, you get your education, you're going to be a difference maker. And I think that's, as we talk about philanthropists, investing back, you invest in something that's going to be successful. And the results are proven here. It is a proven successful commodity.
I think Black philanthropists, we have to take on a model that many other cultures take on. From the research that I've seen in the philanthropy space, there's a lot of intra-giving that exists in communities. Whether you think about religious groups, cultural groups, racial groups, there's a lot of intra-giving. And that is steeped in the idea that we have to save ourselves. Whatever your group is, you have to save yourself. What I've seen in the data that I've looked at is oftentimes, as we aspire to be a part of the mainstream, our giving sometimes is targeted to spaces that don't directly help our own community. And so it often resides in a space of distance from our own community. We don't give grace to our own community. We have unrealistic expectations of our own community. And those justifications then allow us to maybe give to other places outside of our community. But I'll say this, if everyone's giving inside their community and we're giving outside of our community, then how is our community going to benefit in those spaces? So I think that we have to make sure that we are practicing, we have to practice what we preach. We have to live into our own ambitions, and we have to be unapologetic about pouring back into our communities, because on almost every metric, we are underserved, under-resourced. And so there's always a business case for why we can give in our own community without feeling ashamed about it or bashful about it.
So, I think people have to get over, alumni have to get over their own hangups and realize that it's about the greater good of the university, and it's about helping the students. From a university standpoint, it's up to us to create easy ways for donors, alumni to give, because you don't want to make it cumbersome. You want to make it as simple as possible. And then being able to steward those correctly, like steward your donors correctly. Say thank you. I believe in, you can never say thank you too many times, whether the gift is $5 or $5 million. You need to show people where their money is going. That is, to me, super crucial in our community. People want to know that their money is going where you say it's going to go. And once they feel like there's any distrust, they're not going to give. And so make sure that as a university, you're hiring reputable people who have shown that they can get results. They know how to connect with all people, your alumni, community members, key stakeholders, just the community as a whole. But I just think that as an alum, we have to put whatever issues we have aside and know that we're supporting a bigger picture. It's about the students. It's about advancing our institutions. Whatever hangups you had from the lady in the records department who didn't give you your Pell Grant on time, you gotta let that go and let these anything you had issues. I hear a lot of former student athletes say well, I played there. I gave my time and my body to the sport. That's it. No, it's bigger than that. I give to UNC, and I also give to North Carolina Central. I give to Southern. I give to Howard. Hampton, y'all haven't hit me up yet, but I'm gonna give to y'all on y'all giving day. But you have to, support each other. I don't just support my institution. I gave to UMBC. I support my friends who are at other institutions because I want to see everybody win. I'm here about the students, and I want the students to have the things they need to be great. I don't want it to be like, oh, I couldn't get a book because I'm short on this. Like, let me bridge that gap. Oh, I didn't have enough money to go to this professional development conference because I couldn't make ends meet. Let there be a fund, a contingency fund for professional development for students. You know, I just feel like as professionals, philanthropy professionals, we also have to get creative in creating proposals and giving opportunities and inventory that inspires alumni to get involved as well.
Well, I think it's about transparency. I think we've done a great job at Hampton University sharing where our needs are. When you look at our technology advancements with the internet on campus, you look at our ability to upgrade the food service system, the maintenance that's required, you know, given the age of some of our buildings on campus. You know, we're just being transparent around where the money's going, how it's being spent. You know, from an athletic perspective, as we enter new conferences, look to be more competitive on the world stage, competing across multiple sports. You know, it takes more dollars for us to travel, for us to have the programming and support our student athletes. And so I think sharing that this is where the money's going, this is the impact it can have. And I think also we got to start, you know, looking at the ROI of the impact on philanthropy. You know, these dollars supported this amount of students. These students stayed on campus because of this particular scholarship. And I think those stories just, you know, touch the heart of alums and fans and family and friends of Hampton University. And I think it just gives you, you know, all the inspiration you need and the motivation to be supportive and to know that a dollar makes a difference, and consistent dollars are very important as well. So, you know, not just giving once, but, you know, giving consistently, you know, within your means and within, you know, your current level of comfort. But it makes a difference, and, you know, those are ways where I think institutions could continue to be transparent and also show the results of the successful philanthropy.
It is not hyperbole to say that we are living through one of the most aggressively retaliatory environments against Black excellence for decades. The importance of those of us who are Black professionals who have the means to give back to an institution like Hampton and even give to other institutions. There's no question that right now is a critical moment in history, and we're living it right now. I truly believe that the dollars that we can give are going to help set Hampton up to be able to be a barrier against what is happening in our society and to continue to hold its doors open and provide meaningful programs, the ones that we have prided ourselves on providing before this period in time, to continue that type of development, that menu of opportunities. So our jobs as graduates and graduates who are able to put some money aside and give it to an institution like our Home by the Sea, it is our job to make that happen. And whether you start out with a small sum and you work your way up, or you look at your portfolio and say, I'm good, I'm going to give more to Hampton than I've given in the past, and I'm going to do it with the realization that this is a moment. This is going to be an extended moment where we've got to keep these walls standing. We've got to keep them erect, and we've got to keep them strong.
That is a great question. We're seeing that happen at another institution, a HBCU, and I'm not going to say any names, but we have to have a contingency plan, and we have to think of the sustainability. If you get a grant, because we see it now with the administration and the pushback on DEI, and it's forcing a lot of organizations that have some of those words, those buzzwords that are now being banned. It's forcing, they're going to lose federal funding. And so that's why I say you have to keep a pulse on everything that's going on. You have to stay in the know. You have to make sure that you're constantly learning as a development professional working in this industry, because it changes. Working in philanthropy, nonprofit space, fundraising is not for the faint of heart, because you have to stay on top of trends. And I'm really big on having contingency funds, looking at how to get the most bang out of the money that you get in. How can we leverage in kind with some of the cash money we get so that we stretch this the most? But also looking at how we just spend the money too, because you want to spend it, but you also have to have a way to make sure you're replenishing. And that's why it's so big. Like, I'm big on prospecting and having your development plans and constant collaboration, because you don't know when something can shift or change. And so you want to make sure you have prospects in the pipeline and that you're doing a great job of cultivating those prospects. So when it's time to move them through the donor cycle, they're ready to step up to the plate. And that's why you also steward your donors properly too, because you may have to call someone in because there has been something that's derailed what your plan was, because things happen, and ask them, can they either expand on a commitment or, if they can make another commitment maybe faster than what your initial plan was.
Well, it's about vision, right? So I think our vision has to be a 5, 10, 50, 100 year vision. So I think when you look at where we are locally, where these universities reside, how can they be more impactful in the community? How can they be more impactful in the state? And so I think if we continue to play a big role on, supporting our geographic footprint, I think it makes a difference and will help us sustain our legacy of being very impactful and providing value, not only to folks coming in from other states and areas, but really locally as well, becoming a great partner in the community across the board.
Yeah, so I think, as I think about long-term impact versus short-term impact, I think about it through a number of different ways. I feel like it's how are we educating, kids, not about HBCUs and about Hampton specifically, not just as we're talking to high school students, but as we're talking to middle school students. Like, how are we exposing them to the beauty and the awesomeness of Hampton or any of our other HBCUs? Because I think instilling that idea in them early gets them to want to be here. It also adds a new level of excitement into how they are viewing HBCUs and viewing, second higher education as a whole. I would also add in, I think figuring out different ways to have alumni or donors show up in a way that is more tangible for them is a big deal, because more often than not, it's hard to look at giving in a way where it's like, at some large number. So, even if you are treating, even if it's small, it can still be impactful. And I think finding ways to connect to, alumni or donors in a way where really trying to articulate that any amount helps in the objective, I think is a big deal. And the last thing that I will say is, I think what Hampton is doing with the 1868 initiative being at like, whether it is, $18.68 or $186.68, like that whole idea of 1868 and just adding a zero to it, it allows, Hampton is essentially allowing us to meet the university where we are at. And I think it's initiatives and innovative thinking like that creates a long-term strategy so that you don't feel like you have to just give a specific or set number that is just that's higher than what you want to give, but it can be something that's consistent, and it feels good to you.
It comes with, again, that investment. I started out by saying this is, a critical time. There is a fierce urgency of now to make sure that we are supported, that if, today, the message came down from on high that says that, we will not receive federal funding at Hampton University, that is a family, we're still able to provide academic opportunities for our students. That through philanthropic support, through successful investment and money management practices, this enterprise not only survives, but it thrives. And again, it comes back to the product that we have historically pushed out. That, individuals, I go back to this, invest in things that are successful. And we have shown success. And philanthropic investment ensures that success for generations to come. And, our endowment has to get stronger. That is your lifeblood. That is that barometer that, organizations judge you on. We've got to provide more financial scholarship support for our students, not relying solely in a lot of cases on some government support in areas. We've got to look at providing resource dollars for research and resources for our professors outside of, the federal funding streams. And again, all of those things come from philanthropic investment. And, from our philanthropy report to annual report, getting to a point where we are transparent and reporting back on that success. So our partners, our funders, our investors are comfortable and feel real good about their investment.
I think the responsibility to create long-term relationships in philanthropic giving sits mainly in the asker. So in the recipient, we have to tell our story. We have to show proof points of the giving. Oftentimes we will get money or money is given to us and there's no responsibility to respond. There's no responsibility to show outcomes, to show change, to show progress. And people think about at the philanthropic level, the giving isn't just loose change. It's really an investment. So when you think about giving as an investment, it allows you to demand a return on that and have an expectation of that for yourself as the receiver. Someone's given me something as an investment. I then need to make sure that I am showing a return on that. And I'm communicating that back and sharing it out to the world. Hey, everyone, look at what we did here. And I would posit, if you go back to the founding of HBCUs, when the first couple of decades when it was going, the best proof point were the students. Because now you have alum who go out and say, wow, these former enslaved people are brilliant. They're resilient, they're intelligent, and look at what they're doing in their communities. It fosters a space to say, wow, I want to invest too. But if we think that it's transactional, where we get the dollars and we go off, and there's no communication back of progress or impact, then it's hard for an organization to come back a second time and say, I'm going to invest further. I think some of the innovative models out there in giving are centered around, I'm loving what's happening in the micro space, where we are providing both kind of micro short-term, unlimited grants or aid to folks in ways that can help people solve for immediate needs. But I also love what's happening on the other end, where there's deep long-term investment. Because what we know is that for people to really stand up structural systems that will challenge and navigate through biases, they need investment. And similar to any capital program that we're looking at now, there's no assumption that someone's going to invest in a business and the business is running and profitable in 12 months. We give a lot of grace to entrepreneurs who are often white males. We give a lot of grace in their ability to, start, fail, start again, fail, start again. And I'm glad to see that there is openness in the philanthropic space that we need to make sure that we're giving over time so we can see meaningful change in the Black community, because we are facing some very specific and unique systemic challenges that often one-time grants aren't able to solve.
Not so innovative, but I think real strategic partnerships with the corporate community, where there is a presence on campus, where again our students are provided opportunities early on in their matriculation, even after so soon as after freshman year, where though that student is getting their education on a Hampton campus, at the same time they're becoming involved, integrated into a corporate community. I think those types of investments in campuses are unique and profitable, not only for the student, but for that company. Again, you start to ingrain your talent early on. You're investing in that individual, and they're more likely to be an employee who comes in day one after graduation and is a difference maker. Additionally, I think it is, collective funding, where groups are, as we talk to, private equity managers, as we look at, their investments, there are some unique opportunities. If we think about our athletic program in the NIL space, if we had those investors who said, hey, I want to see HBCU compete at the highest level at NCAA athletics, there's this opportunity to create that with NIL. It's not the most sound model, but it's what's out there right now that says that, hey, if our basketball team, it's March, if our basketball team gets into a tournament and makes a run, think about the visibility that brings to an institution. The return, again, on that investment in your athletic program through media visibility and recruitment, it's real. And those opportunities are there through investment where, you are showing as a corporation or, a funding entity, you're receiving something in return, but it's still supporting the growth of the institution. I think that is a new type of philanthropy. It's a new type of investment in institutions. As the landscape continues to change, we just have to be ready to take advantage of opportunities. And I think under the leadership of President Williams, I think we always will. I appreciate the fact that he allows us to be innovative.
So I started at Hampton University in 2004. I was so eager to go to Hampton that I actually came down to Hampton 1 week after I graduated from high school to be at the summer enrichment LS Ant biology program. It's a 6-week program that runs concurrently with pre-college. After I had returned home, my father had received a letter from the National Hampton Alumni Association asking for alumni to donate. I believe the amount was $100. At the time, Hampton University had record enrollment, and they were seeking out additional funds to be able to provide the scholarships that those students had earned by their grades. And my father was sharing this with me as I am actively packing to be a freshman at Hampton University. And so I asked him why he was doing that, because he knew that money, he could have just given me that money as a student, as an incoming student at Hampton. And my dad very clearly said, Lorraine, when you have things and when you have the resources, you don't just keep them in the family, you share them, because other students also need to go to Hampton. Other students also have the right and have earned the privilege to be where you're going. And why would I not give when I have it to give? My father said, you're already taken care of, but if I can give extra money to help someone else out, why would I not do that? And that was my first example, before I had even become an official student at Hampton, on our responsibility, not just to our children and ensuring that our children are Hampton legacies, but ensuring that the children in our community, our global family, is able to be at Hampton University.
Speaking from experience as part of the board for the National Hampton Alumni Association, I consider it a great joy that the fundraising we do for the Student Relief Fund is to make sure there is money available to students who, by no fault of their own, run into a very difficult situation. A parent who may have lost a job, or illness, or something of that nature. The Student Relief Fund that we raise funds for, it goes to helping students over a hump. That hump, if they are not helped, could end up keeping them from ever getting their degree. We have statistics that show that the money raised that goes into the Student Relief Fund and then is very judiciously directed to students who apply for it, keeps them in school over 90% of the time. It brings me joy that we are able to make a difference between someone who goes to Hampton but doesn't graduate and someone who's able to walk across that stage and claim with honor that they are a Hamptonian.
You know, for me, fortunately, again, working for the United Negro College Fund, working at other HBCUs, I've seen firsthand. I've been part of the power of investment. I've seen programs like the J.P. Morgan Chase Corporate Scholars Program at the United Negro College Fund early in my career, which was a program where college students were brought in sophomore year. They were able to work internships over the summer. 100% rate of those students, going into Chase after graduation and being difference makers. But Chase also made the strategic decision to make a financial investment in UNCF outside of the scholarship program, knowing that there was a need for general operating support to make sure that the institution thrived. I think over the years, watching individuals who have worked their entire careers to build wealth, giving of their time, their talent, and their treasure to make sure other students have the same opportunities that they have, that they didn't have to go through the same trials and tribulations, but to make those investments and sitting with those donors and listening to their whys. This is why I'm making this investment, and them telling their stories of, being on their way out the door at an institution and someone stepping in to make a difference and saying, I believe in you, or an institution taking on that debt themselves and saying, you know what, I'm gonna make sure you graduate. Those stories always resonate with me because it shows the power of education. It shows what happens when we provide access to students, when we, again, coming back to that term, when we invest in their success. I think for a number of young people, the only barrier between them going left and right in life is somebody saying, I'm going to support you. I'm going to speak life into your success. I'm going to invest into making sure that you succeed. And I have been fortunate in my career to see it firsthand and to see the impact. That's why I'm never comfortable doing these videos, but I am comfortable having the conversation about why we need to support minority higher education, why HBCUs are important, why we have to make sure that our institutions not only survive, but continue to thrive as we move forward.
I have one coming up. I just received word of approval of a grant where we'll be doing some migraine screening on campus with the School of Pharmacy. So there's an opportunity for the school to receive a check directly from a firm who got it from a grant from a large pharmaceutical company, and that will provide the means for them to bring in a national thought leader to come and talk to our pharmacy students on screening and the importance of screening in migraine care. Certainly, as statistics point that Black women and our community tend to be significantly impacted on migraine care and the misdiagnosis of it. So I think that's one example of a form of philanthropy, although it is a medical education grant, but it definitely comes from a foundation-like support from these pharma companies. And the other examples, just, when you look at scholarship opportunities, there's nothing more important than the kind of the student rescue fund when folks are, short, small amounts of money so that they are unable to kind of graduate or obtain a degree. Those are some of the quick wins that philanthropy can support, which can help, families who are struggling during layoffs or during, difficulties in the home, that the student can rest assured that, all the hard work and success that they put forth to developing their degree can be accomplished.
A program that I've experienced that was immensely helpful in getting Black students through, all centered around early intervention. So whether you think about models like Inroads that are about getting qualified seniors or juniors in high school and getting them into systems and funding their progress to overcome barriers over a number of years so that when they graduate college, they're ready. That's an example of early intervention with deep investment. Another one, I worked at Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble has a program called CIBI, and it was for Cincinnati-based students who were Black. And they caught them at sophomore year in college, gave them internships at Procter & Gamble, and they worked there until they graduated. And many of them, even if they didn't come back and work at Procter & Gamble, you had that kind of pedigree resume. You had that kind of company on your resume, and that opened doors for them. But again, that was early intervention with ongoing investment to help overcome the barriers that are present. So it goes beyond charity and goes into impact. And so for me, I believe that if you think about those models that have been around, you see a bit of that now is how can I come into a space, identify early opportunity spaces that fit my values as a philanthropy, as a philanthropic organization, and how can I do early investment with ongoing care to ensure that students are getting what they need.
When I was at A&T, we, had a donor who was really big in the business school. And I don't want to go, I don't know if I want to share name. I don't know if it's public information, but I think through having success with us being good stewards of the money the donor had given before, I think on my way out, they made $1 million commitment to the athletic department, which directly impacted positively the student athletes. At A&T, we weren't fully funded in scholarships. And so any money that we raised through the Aggie Athletic Foundation, it went to scholarships. So we knew clearly defined what our mission was. It was to help with scholarships, unless a donor restricted it to something else. But that's what our call to action was with scholarships. And so by doing the right thing by donors, and it may take time. I tell people all the time, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a cycle to donors and prospecting. It's a whole donor cycle. And so, but if you do right by people, in the end, you're going to come out with a success story. And so, I started at A&T in 2012 and I left in 2016. And so through that 4-year cycle, by us stewarding, and not just us in athletics, us collectively as an institution, because it's collaboration. Your student athletes aren't just athletes. They were in a college, they were in a business school, engineering, communications, whatever. So it's about working with other entities too, to come up again with a creative way to inspire a donor to give. And that's what we did with one of the instances I can remember at A&T. That was a monumental gift. At Alabama State, and I would say it's different at different institutions, and I'm speaking from an athletic lens. At A&T, giving was more transactional because it was based around season tickets, football season tickets, and priority purchasing. So we were able to kind of galvanize a little more through that. Now, some people did give just philanthropically, but a lot of the bulk of our revenue that was generated came in through our priority purchase period. At Alabama State, it was different. It was really more philanthropic. People gave because they just wanted to give. Whatever we were raising money for, whatever we were trying to do, they just gave. We didn't have priority purchasing or a ticket donation or a seat donation. It just was more philanthropic in nature. And so you have to, again, learn your demographic to see what inspires them to give and formulate a plan from there.
So I can't think about a specific example, but what I will say is, I've noticed that there are so many different ways to show up from a philanthropic standpoint, whether that be, you being interested in having a relationship with your professor, right? And so philanthropy might show up how you give back to the department that you graduated from. And I see that pretty often with a lot of my peers and people that I know. I'll see a lot of folks who want to show up through a sport perspective, right? And figuring out ways to give back to the sport department and to the athletics department and create more opportunities in that space, right? Especially with me coming from the basketball team and some of my teammates, they do a really good job of figuring out ways to and finding ways to give back from university to the universities from a sport perspective. And then I also, have seen a number of people look at ways to give back from a scholarship perspective, right? Looking back at the road that they had going through college or going through HBCUs, and the success that they now have, right? Them now being able to give back in a way that provides scholarships is another amazing way that I've seen people showing up from a philanthropic standpoint.
The best way is to get involved in your local chapter. When you're involved in your local chapter, you can be on the front lines of knowing what's happening in your city and your state. You are right there welcoming our students when they come into the city for football games, when they come in for other activities, when we're recruiting students to go to Hampton, and you have a better understanding of why we are doing certain fundraising activities so that you can see where these dollars are going. I really encourage you to be part of your local chapter and attend the meetings, be there on the ground, because our students, our young people, they look up to us, and they're proud to see us rooting them on.
So I feel like, I think from a storytelling standpoint, I think how it's being communicated and where it's being communicated is a really big deal, right? Like, are we showing up in places where, people, I'll put in air quotes, exist, right? How are we showing up socially? And what does that look like? How are we showing up, digitally, right? And what does that look like? And I think more often than not, a lot of us, tend to be more engaged from a mobile perspective or from a digital perspective. And while our attention spans might be short, I will say there are a lot of things that tend to capture people's attention when they're scrolling on their phones. And that tends to be the most native way that folks are typically conversing. And so I feel like, if a lot of HBCUs can make a more conscious and concerted effort to show up digitally and show up socially, as well as finding those opportunities to highlight the alumni from the universities who are giving back, who are connected to a younger demographic and a younger audience, and have a pulse on culture in a way. I think that would be a big way to get in front of the next generation of kids and capture their attention.
I think one of the ways a way that we elevate this work is that those of us who came from these programs have to stand up and speak very loudly. We have to speak very loudly about programs that were founded to overcome systemic barriers that helped us. There's a lot of talk right now around DEI, and my feelings around DEI is that DEI is appropriate. DEI is needed. A part of DEI is making sure that we are creating diverse work environments or diverse organizational environments, because we know from every piece of research that diverse groups are more productive than non-diverse groups. That's been proven time and time again. So DEI actually is great for the business. But another part of DEI is helping to overcome systemic barriers that maybe your organization was a part of, right? And so being thoughtful about how do you right some of the wrongs? How do you cure some of the ills that were part of society? And philanthropic organizations have a responsibility to look back on spaces where their donors and their founders may have inadvertently caused harm. And how do you right that with people that can ultimately then continue to give back? But we have to then share those stories and speak very loudly. So those of us who are products of programs like Inroads or programs that really help, those of us who got, fellowships to our graduate schools, or we got local scholarships from groups that help us get through Hampton, we have to speak loudly about those, because it adds a level of pride that these programs are working, and it encourages folks to also give. I think another thing that we have to do is we have to not expect that someone's going to save us. I think we have to turn around and save ourselves. Every other community, cultural group, major world religious organization, they pour into their own communities at very high rates. They invest in their own communities. They give inside of their own communities, both philanthropic and business. And we should be thoughtful about the role that we play in saving our own communities.
I think it's important to be very honest about the way things are. So when you think about Hampton University, you often think about the beautiful campus with the sparkling James River as the backdrop, and it's gorgeous. Hampton is by far not only the most beautiful HBCU campus, but the most beautiful campus in the continental US. But I think we just are not transparent enough about what it took to get here. We honor the Emancipation Oak and we know that story, but we don't know all of the little stories. I think the best way that we can celebrate these stories is to create opportunities for people to share those stories, to enable past alumni and giving them the means to talk to the current students, to create those places of community in our own communities where we can then say, I know that you want to go to Hampton. I know it might seem tough because I too was the first person in my family to go. And so I think the best way to celebrate and to elevate these stories is to create multiple opportunities when and where these stories can be shared.
I think there's a couple things. One, it is telling our stories, and not just telling our stories from the 3,000 foot level, but from the ground, letting our students be part of and sharing their journeys, be part of telling their story. I think it is reporting and being transparent about how your funds are being spent and sharing impact statements. This is the impact of your gift. When someone can see that, this gift provided this type of support and these were the outcomes. It's just like when I open my personal kind of portfolio and I see how, investments are moving. You want to be able to do that and say that, this is the return on my investment. And, this student who I knew coming here freshman year, I've seen him sophomore year, I've seen him junior year. And now this student is, it took a job here, and a couple years later, they got this promotion, and a couple years later, they got this promotion. And then guess what? That company, because of that individual's input and their willingness to stand up and tell their story, is now investing back. And now we're able to support more students. And then that individual's giving up their private funding. That impact, I think telling those stories and connecting those dots for individuals, it makes a difference.
I think it goes back again to investing in a robust communications team that is going to be able to capture the wins. People want to see the video. They want to hear the testimonials. I remember advocating to have a position for a director of creative content when I became the interim AD at Alabama State. I knew the wave, and maybe it's my journalism background, but I knew that is how you galvanize and get people and eyeballs on your program. So we as HBCUs have to be more intentional about how we're telling our story, and capturing that video, showing a day in the life of a student. This is what a student goes through. These are some of the challenges. People want to see that. They want inside access. One thing about us, we like access. We want to know behind the scenes. We want to know what it's like. And if you're giving people this is behind the scenes footage of, this is what your basketball travel, a day of travel or on the road, that could be a point to show hey, we need your support. We're in a new conference. We're in the CAA. This is what a day in the life now of a student athlete looks like. And it could be different than when Hampton was in the MEAC. But if your donors or prospects don't know, they don't know. And so we have to be more intentional about how we tell the story. What is the narrative? What's going to pull at the heartstrings to really inspire our alumni to give?
It's all about sharing the story. I mean, it's all about, being loud. And I think our footprint on social media needs to be, more focused on so-and-so did this, it had this type of impact. We need to show it in a case study format, infographic, make it very easy for folks to kind of digest. So-and-so gave $10, and that $10 was able to pass through and support and impact X, Y, and Z. This person gave $10,000, and it had a impact of X, Y, and Z. No matter what the dollar amount is, it adds up to be impactful, and support the university's mission and focus. So I think we got to tell our stories. We got to use social, we got to use newsletters, audio, wherever people are gathering for information. It matters for us to share the success in the case stories. It's important and it matters, and it just starts with getting going and just making a commitment. Then once you learn the impact of your commitment or your dollar, then it becomes almost natural to want to continue in that regard, because most of us, pretty much all of us, have a soft spot for helping others and wanting to see others succeed. And I think when you look at our community and you look at where we need the most support, is taking care of our own and being impactful and being purposeful and how we support our institutions and our leaders.
HBCUs allow students to focus on their personal development outside of the focus of race. And so while I was at Hampton, I learned how to be a whole person who was never bogged down by being a Black woman. It never was even a consideration. And because that thing that so often takes up so much of the air, it seems, with young people and how they navigate through the world, with that being removed by being in this safe place of Hampton University, I was able to flourish.
The last thing that I'd say is, I come from a long line of HBCU grads. And by long line, I just mean my immediate family. My dad went to St. Paul. My mom did grad school at Bethune-Cookman. My brother went to Morehouse. My other brother went to FAMU. I have cousins that went to Lincoln and Dale State and Howard. And in all of our individual experiences, the thing that I say is choosing an HBCU was hands down, undeniably the best decision that any and all of us made. And so, I just hope that more people and more kids get the opportunity to experience the joy, the excitement, and the overall feeling that, I got to experience and so many of my family members got to experience. I hope they get to experience that too, because it's once in a lifetime.
If I were to end on a note, I would say I want to inspire each and every one of you to give more than you're inclined to give. Our children, our young adults need you. You've made it. So how do you help them make it?
For me, philanthropy and driving impact in our community will take all of us being very intentional and deliberate about how we are giving. It will take us being strategic in how we partner. It will take bravery for those of us who have access to either direct access to resources or indirect access to resources, to be brave and go ask. It's going to take us to learn how to build the business case so that we can go from charity to impact. And what I'm thoughtful about is, and that work takes training. And it's okay that we don't know. It's not something that's innate, because we are a group that has generally been the benefactors of charity. Now we have to start turning that around to become the arbiters of impact. And as we think about the role that we play as individuals, the next generation of young kids out there need someone to stand in the gap for them. We need people to go to our corporations, regardless of our level, and put our names in the hat. Because if the organization you love's name is not in the hat, then it won't be considered. I'd rather be in the hat and get a no than to not be in the hat and never be considered. We have to learn how to ask. We have to learn how to build the case. But most importantly, we have to also do our own part in our own lives. And I think it's very thoughtful about how we can do that. I remember hearing this amazing story of one of our fellow HBCU organizations or classes. They're a year older than us. So as we were getting ready for our 20-year reunion, they had made some press across social about the number they hit at their 20-year. And I knew someone in the class, and I called and I said, "What did you all do? Like, how did you all hit this number?" And she said that about 30 of them decided that they were going to forego a luxury item per month, whether that be a luxury dinner, a night out, an item. And they all made a commitment that they would sacrifice one thing a month that was in the luxury space. So a really nice dinner out or a really nice piece of clothing, and they would put that money into an account, and they raised $200,000 that they gave back to their university from creating a discipline of giving that was really focused on strategy and strong operations, but something in consistency that allowed them to create this amazing moment that I saw on social, and then inspire us to turn around and create something really similar for our 20-year class. And so when we stood up there with that check for $179,000, it was an amazing moment for my class, because we did it as a group, but we were also inspired by another class a year earlier who did the same thing. So my point is, your work, when you do it well and you talk about it, really inspires others near and far to give. And so my final words are, I want us to be really thoughtful about how we leverage our access, our resources, and our power to make big asks, big, bold, audacious asks that will benefit the most vulnerable and the most needed in our own communities.
I used to say this at A&T all the time. A proud Aggie is a giving Aggie. So I'm going to say a proud pirate is a giving pirate, and that everyone in Pirate Nation should give on your giving day, because it's going to help your students achieve the greatness that they came to Hampton to do. You know, everyone needs help at some point in their life. And whether it's $5, your weekly Starbucks run, whatever, all dollars count. I think we sometimes get caught up in the amount. And that's why when I'm talking to, my HBCUs, just give something. Get in the habit of just giving something. But a proud pirate is a giving pirate. And I hope that all of your alumni, your key stakeholders will support on your giving day.
It sounds like I'm being repetitive, but we're at a very important juncture in the evolution of not just HBCU education, but education in general, where for the first time, I know, there's always been threats, but for the first time, I personally believe there's going to be a kind of a seismic shift in education and the institutions that make it through this moment. There is an urgency of now, making sure that in this moment, if there's any moment that you thought about being a difference maker, or getting involved or advocating for your institution, it is this moment where your voice needs to be heard in those rooms. Your prayers are important, but your philanthropic support, your investment back, not just you, but you being an advocate, if there are opportunities within your church or your employer or in your community to provide support for our students, to provide support for our institutions, it's that moment where collectively we've got to stand up and say that Hampton University, surviving is not what I want to talk about in this moment. I want to talk about the fact that Hampton University will thrive, we will grow, we will continue to provide economic and educational opportunities for our students, and we're looking forward to creating Hamptonians who make a difference for years and centuries to come.